Yeah, it is. Should have held this like in an auditorium.
What's that?
Should have held this in an auditorium. I didn't think there'd be this many people.
This is crazy.
Did you go to the cemetery to get her grave?
No.
It's slippery. But I'm the one.
Where is the cemetery? Which cemetery?
It's on Church Street.
Does it have a name or no?
Just this street, yeah. This is 309. There's no street. There's a Domino's.
Oh, I didn't know if there was a name of the cemetery.
Yeah, St. Joseph. There's a Domino's. You go, and it's right across the street from
From the Domino's on Church Street.
Yeah.
And how do you know where she's buried?
Mm-hmm.
You can see it. You can tell.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you. Hey, Chris. How are you? Good to see you. Everything all right? There you go.
Yeah, I missed my call.
Getting started in a few minutes here. Everybody from the media, is everybody set up, or does anybody need a minute or two?
I'm good.
We all good?
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, very good. We're going to get started. Good morning, and thank you for attending this very important news conference. I'm Trooper Anthony Petrosky, Troop N, Community Service Officer and Public Information Officer. Today, we'll be providing the current case status of the Marise Chiverella homicide investigation. After the news conference, you'll be given a media packet. Inside this media packet contains all of the posters that we have here, a case overview, and a list of the dignitaries that are up here that I will be announcing shortly. Please use these to provide accurate information to the public. I would now like to introduce dignitaries who are in attendance today. When I introduce their names, they will raise their hands so you can identify them. Captain Michael Carroll, Troop N Commanding Officer. Lieutenant Devin Prudosky, Troop N Criminal Investigations Section Commander. Sergeant Ryan Stefanik, Troop N Criminal Investigations Section Supervisor. Corporal Mark Barron, Troop N Hazleton Patrol Unit Section Supervisor, Lead Investigator of the Marise Chiverella Homicide Investigation. Trooper James Quiros, Troop N Hazleton Criminal Investigation Unit Member. Captain Brian Tobin, retired, former Troop N Criminal Investigation Section Supervisor. Lieutenant Daniel Gentile, retired, former Troop N Criminal Investigation Unit Assessment Member. Corporal Sean Williams, retired, former Troop N Criminal Investigation Assessment Unit Member. Corporal Thomas McAndrew, retired, former Troop N Criminal Investigation Assessment Unit Member. Trooper Donald Good, retired, former Troop N Criminal Investigation Unit Member, one of the initial case investigators. Luzerne County Deputy District Attorney Daniel Zola. Mr. Eric Schubert, genealogist, ES Genealogy. Mr. Ronald Chiverella and family. We will answer any questions that you may have. However, I respectfully ask that they be held until the end of the news conference to allow for each speaker to fully deliver their remarks. I would now like to introduce Lieutenant Devin Prudosky, Troop N Criminal Investigation Section Commander.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to first thank the Chiverella family for believing in us and Pennsylvania State Police, all our investigative skills. I talked to Ron and Carmen Marie this morning. About 4 years ago, when I took over the section, I promised them that we would do our best to solve this case, and we're here now. So I do appreciate all their support. I'd like to thank the media for bringing the attention to this case. Obviously, it's almost 58 years old, and it really means a lot to us to share this with the rest of the country. I'd also like to thank my troop commander, Captain Michael Carroll, and retired Area Commander Major Sherman Shadle. He's not here today, but I want to thank them for trusting us to solve this, giving us the ability to use some money that wasn't afforded to us earlier in this investigation to bring this to a conclusion. On the board over here, we have a bunch of people we'd like to recognize for assistance in this case. Obviously, the Chiverella family, our former PSP investigators, ES Genealogy and Mr. Eric Schubert, our PSP DNA laboratory in Greensburg, their captain's here, I'll point him out in the back. They helped us tremendously at the end. A lot of DNA, a lot of swabs went to them. They were very good at getting to those samples and providing back to us what our results were. Luzerne County District Attorney's Office, Luzerne County Coroner's Office, specifically Dr. Charles Siebert. He assisted us with the exhumation, getting what we needed for DNA to process. Cavalry Cemetery, which is down in Drums, was the cemetery that we had to go to for the exhumation. They were great. Wilkes-Barre Burial Vault Service. I'd also like to thank the relatives of the accused. Many people, you can pick your friends, you can pick the job you have, but you can't pick your relatives. I was thankful for them for providing samples, knowing where it could lead, that it could be one of their family members that committed this crime. And I do have to say, I do thank them for that. And any other law enforcement agency in the past, when this started, typically it was word of mouth. Investigators drove miles and miles to investigate or look into certain people that they may have believed committed this crime. We went New Jersey State Police, New York State Police, Ohio State Police. It spanned the greater Mid-Atlantic when this started, and all those investigators and all those other agencies, we do appreciate their help. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through a little bit of the specifics for the case, kind of walk you through where it went. And again, as Trooper Petrosky said, at the end we'll answer all your questions, and we'll identify our accused / suspect here in this case. So as we all know, on Wednesday, March 18th, 1964, at approximately 8 a.m., Marise Chiverella left her house at 533 North Alter Street, Hazleton City. She walked in a north direction towards St. Joseph's Parochial School, and she was last seen near 6th Street, and it was 6th Street and Church Street. That's about the last time she was seen. That was about 8:10 a.m. On that morning. At approximately 1 p.m. on March 18, 1964, her body was discovered in a stripping hole that they used for refuse off of Airport Road near the airport, so Hazleton Municipal Airport. The investigation revealed that Marise was physically and sexually assaulted and murdered and left in the stripping hole. However, all her clothing and all her belongings were there with her. For the first 40 plus years, the Pennsylvania State Police worked this case with old-fashioned police work. They went out, they interviewed people, they sent teletypes, they interviewed other people, and it went word of mouth. Who do you think could have committed this? Who could have committed this crime? Without that, they were using, with all that being said, they were using tangible physical evidence to try and solve this crime. We have moved in a different direction here as we got into DNA evidence through the 90s. Pennsylvania State Police was founded in 1905, so over half of our existence, we've investigated this case. During the last 57 years, generations of troopers, as you see here, have worked this and given it special attention due to the nature of this investigation and the murder. In 2007, the Pennsylvania State Police DNA lab developed a suspect profile from the killer's bodily fluids that were left on Marise's jacket. Shortly thereafter, the DNA profiles for all the original suspects that we had were submitted to the lab. Unfortunately, when they came back, none of them were the same. So we had to eliminate those suspects. In 2007, they also used the DNA profile and uploaded it to the databases, and it was checked monthly for all these years. So for 57 years, that profile was checked monthly against all other criminals that had DNA in the system. We're going to jump from 2007 to 2018. When 2018 hit, we utilized Parabon Nano Labs which a lot of news stations have been showing, the news conference he did in 2018. They developed a snapshot phenotype facial feature of what the suspect would look like. I'll let that to everybody out there when we show you the suspect if you think if it's something similar or not. However, we got numerous tips, we followed numerous leads, none of them proved to be viable from that news conference. However, what Parabon did do for us is they sent the DNA sample into a file called GEDmatch. And within GEDmatch, it's a genealogy database, and your DNA is compared to other people in that database, and we got a match. Our match was very distal. That came in 2019. It was very distal, which means I believe it was sixth cousin, approximately. Somewhere around like sixth cousin, so a very distant match. So we conducted research trying to find out what family members were related using genealogy. In 2020, we came to an agreement with the Luzerne County District Attorney's Office to work with Mr. Eric Schubert in ES Genealogy. Mr. Schubert began immediately on our case and was working on a family tree so that we can go back and look at names of relatives of our DNA match. As we researched the list of relatives, our Pennsylvania State Police DNA lab alerted us to the fact that we never created a Y chromosome DNA profile. So your Y chromosome DNA profile is only found in males, and it follows your paternal lineage. So if you're a father, your son has the same Y DNA profile as you, as well as your grandfather, great-grandfather. It follows your line from paternal lineage. That was something new for us. It can mutate, but typically when it mutates, it's off 1 small percent, and it's typical that they find it in the same gene when it mutates. So in 2020, we established that profile for a Y chromosome. While exploring the genealogical family names, we came across the surname of Palmino. The Palmino name was out of the Weatherly area. We recognized that name from an open homicide investigation that we had in 1972. Through that homicide, we had DNA from that homicide. We utilized that and confirmed through our lab that we were on the right ancestral track. So that was giving us the path to follow. While we were researching the genealogical track of that name, we came across the name of John Palmino. He was a New Jersey State Police captain. So we contacted him for help. He gave us our help. He gave us a family member of his that he considered to be their historian and had a family tree for everybody in his family going back generations. When we got that family tree through the remainder of 2020 and 2021, we interviewed numerous relatives from that family tree to see where it would lead. We acquired many DNA samples, and again, it started narrowing down our pool of suspects. And we were fortunate enough for them to help us with that. So using the samples we obtained, we narrowed potential suspect list down to 4 individuals. One of those individuals had been arrested in 1974 by the Pennsylvania State Police. I believe it was Trooper Guy, who couldn't make it today. He was arrested for involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, sexual assault, and aggravated assault. The same person was also arrested by Hazleton City Police Department in 1978 for reckless endangerment and harassment. Armed with this information and the ability to eliminate the other 3 suspects, we found our main suspect. So our suspect has been identified as James Paul Fort. He was born in 1941 and died in 1980. Unfortunately, Mr. Fort's not alive for us to prosecute. However, he is the person that committed this crime. So with that information, we did an exhumation on Mr. Fort at Cavalry Cemetery, which I talked about earlier. That was on January 6th this year, 2022. On February 3rd, 2022, we received the results from our DNA lab. And James Paul Fort matched the DNA profile from the semen stain on Marise Chiverella's jacket. The ability of selecting an unrelated person, as the DNA profile states, is 1 in 480 septillion. So for somebody else to have that profile, you would need 480 septillion other people. So this is an exact match. The Y chromosome also matched to the Y chromosome we had on file. And to put it in perspective, we did a little research. 117 billion people are to be have reported lived on Earth at one time or another. So 480 septillion means you would have to go through 4 million other Earths to find the same DNA profile. So we're as exact as we can be. And again, Mr. Ford is our suspect. We're not under the impression that this isn't the only crime that he may have committed, and that maybe there's people out there that this guy may have perpetrated something on them before. So if you do have that information, we ask you to call the State Police at Hazleton. We'd love to talk to you. You can ask for Corporal Barron, Sergeant Stefanik, Trooper Petrosky, or myself, Lieutenant Petrosky. We'd love to talk to some people if there is something else out there that he committed. And with that, I'll turn it over. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant. I would now like to introduce Corporal Mark Barron, who has been the lead investigator on this case. Corporal Barron.
Thank you, Trooper Petrosky. Good morning, everyone. Today is a very important day for the Pennsylvania State Police. It's my impression that this is the fourth oldest case, cold case, to be solved in the country utilizing genetic genealogy. And that's the tool that Mr. Schubert helped to provide to us. And if it's the fourth oldest cold case in the country to be solved utilizing this technology, it's the oldest in the state. So this is a very important day for our department. It's also an important day for the Hazleton community as a whole. This was a violent and a heinous crime that was committed against a small child. And I'm going to get a motion. We're always told not to get attached to a case, but you can't help it. And it's a vivid memory for everybody who lived through this, and it's a vivid memory for everybody who grew up in this area. You were told by a grandparent, a parent, an aunt, an uncle, this is Marise's story. And what happened to her ushered in a change in this community. Whether you like it or not, the way you lived changed after March 18th of 1964 in Hazleton. And lastly, this has been a day that this family has been waiting for nearly 58 years. And as the lieutenant said, even though we couldn't bring charges against Mr. Ford, I hope that this brings some type of closure. I really do. Now that I have all of that out of the way, I was assigned this case in 2017. And I was told by Corporal McAndrew, who's down there at the end, he was the retiring lead investigator, and he went ahead and told me that this case was solvable. And that the way that you solved this case is that somebody needed to work it. And you had to dedicate a lot of time to it. And with that thought in mind, I spent countless hours on duty, off duty, working this case. My wife will tell you. And even after I left the criminal investigation unit, when I got promoted, I came back to the troop and I went to Sergeant Stefanik and I asked him if I could still be the lead investigator. He said absolutely. But when you work a case that's nearly 58 years old, you work as a part of a team. And since March 18th of 1964, we assembled one heck of a team. We had over 230 members of this department that had a hand in this case in some way, shape, or form. And that doesn't include the civilians that worked at the crime lab. They went above and beyond trying to ensure that this case was solved. I'm going to give a shout out to Tim Gavel from the Greensburg Crime Laboratory. He did an excellent job, so thank you, Tim. And recently I was told a story by Sergeant Stefanik, who got it from retired Sergeant Good, that as one of the original investigators on this case, they worked this case from March 18th of 1964 through the end of July of 1964 without taking a day off. And I think that shows the incredible dedication that the original investigators gave to this case. Again, they always tell us not to get emotionally attached to an investigation, but you can't help it. And when we called Mr. Good, he knew the date of this incident like that. So it stuck with him, and it stuck with every member that had some involvement in this case. So with all that being said, special thanks need to go out to the current command staff of Troop N Hazleton. Captain Michael Carroll, Lieutenant Joseph Sparich, who couldn't be here, and Lieutenant Devin Grutowski. Your willingness to release funds so this investigation could be furthered was greatly appreciated. Without your assistance, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't. On a personal note, for myself, to all the sergeants who I worked under at PSP Hazleton, thank you for allowing me to still work this case and work all my patrol functions. I appreciate it. That goes out to, again, Sergeant Stefanik, who I named, Lieutenant Jim Danini from Stroudsburg, Sergeant Jerry Ustinowski from Bloomsburg, and Sergeant Anthony Ferdinand, he's in the back, from PSP Hazleton. To Trooper James Quiros from the Criminal Investigation Unit. Q, thank you for assisting me with conducting all these interviews and getting the DNA that broke this case open. And to Eric Schubert of AS Genealogy, thank you for providing your expertise and guidance to this case. And finally, I just want to say that this case has not only displayed the tenacity of this department, but it also has shown the great work that's being accomplished by law enforcement daily. Even though it took nearly 58 years for this case to be solved, I think that this should instill in the families of victims across the state and across the country a sense of hope. And that hope is that no matter how long it may take, we as law enforcement will never give up in trying to find the perpetrators of these heinous crimes that go on. So, and God willing, in life or in death, you will be found. So, I'll be done now. Thank you.
Thank you, Corporal Barron. Your words are inspiring and a true motivation to all current law enforcement and past. Our next speaker is Mr. Eric Schubert from ES Genealogy. Mr. Schubert sent me an email years ago asking if he could work on our case. For the Pennsylvania State Police, that's a little outside the box. This decision paid off. Mr. Schubert provided a service that we would have never expected, and he reached out to us. We are proud to have him here, and I'm proud to introduce him to come up and speak next, Mr. Eric Schubert.
Thank you, Trooper Prokofsky, for the very, very kind words. As was said, my name is Eric Schubert of ES Genealogy. I was the independent consultant brought on through the District Attorney's Office to conduct a genealogy investigation into this case. Just a little bit about my background. My work with genealogy stretches back over 10 years and has been featured nationally. I've assisted in several other cold cases throughout the country over the past 2 years. And as was mentioned, I've been involved in this investigation for about 2 years. So it's certainly something that I've been working on a very long time, and it means a lot to me, as I know it does to so many people here. It really was a multifaceted investigation that left absolutely no stone unturned. At the beginning, as was mentioned, the highest DNA match to Marise's assailant in public DNA databases was about 53 centimorgans. And a centimorgan is, think of it like a unit of measurement for a genetic linkage. You share a set amount of centimorgans with everyone in your family. And 53 is very, very low, as was mentioned. But that was where we started. From there, I conducted traditional family tree research using census records, military records, newspaper records, and more. So we were really zeroing in on families, locations, links, and it took a year, but we were able to go from 53 centimorgans to almost 200, which now is really something that I can work with. It was the strongest and most important lead that we had to date. I'll never forget when Corporal Barron was telling me that we had just gotten that match, because in that moment, I knew that we were going to find the assailant. We quickly worked our way up from that match to a match that in the end was over 1,000 centimorgans. It was about 1,200. That's something that you would share with a person who's a half-uncle, a cousin, that sort of thing. So to go from 53 to 179 to 1,200 took 2 years. And at the end of the day, those matches allowed me to identify the assailant for the state police. So that is a bit of background on the specifics on how this team did it. And on a personal note, I really would like to say that the investigation that went into all of this work was probably the hardest genealogy task that I've ever faced in over 10 years, as long as I've been doing genealogy. I would dare to say that this was probably the hardest thing that I've ever done in my entire life. And it means so much to me that I was able to be on the team that could provide answers for the Chiverella family, and to, of course, help out the state police to close this investigation. With that being said, there's so many people that I want to thank. I'm sure I'm going to miss some people. Words can't express my appreciation for Corporal Mark Barron, who was absolutely indispensable in his role as lead investigator on the case. I especially want to thank Trooper Q, Trooper Heroes, Sergeant Stefanik, Trooper Petrosky for not thinking my email was crazy and actually taking me up on it, and especially retired Corporal and former DA's Office Detective Sean Williams for everything they did to assist in solving this case. And like I said, there's so many people who worked on this, so that's just a snippet. But this was really something that is going to stick with me for a very long time. And everyone's work in this was absolutely invaluable to finding James Paul Ford. Their dedication, their advocacy, their support, and contributions were really invaluable to this investigation. And like I said, they all played really vital roles. I was 18 years old when I started working on this case. Now I'm almost 21, so this is something that I've been working on this for a very long time, to say the least. So it's certainly something that I know is going to stick with me, because I spent so much time on it. I've been working on it practically my entire undergraduate career so far in college. So the people on this team mean a lot to me. They put so much into it. We worked as a team, and we, in the end, found the answers that everyone was looking for. And like I said, today I especially want to say that my thoughts are with the Chiverellas, especially Marise's great siblings who I've gotten to know very well over the past 2 years. They've waited so long to have this answer. I, of course, can't put myself in their shoes, but I know how hard this is. And I really want to say that I appreciate all their kind words and support, and it's been great getting to know them. Their words always mean a lot, and it was really important to me that they know how hard this team was working over these past 2 years to find James Paul Ford. It really is a big honor to have assisted, and yes, thank you so much.
Eric Eric, on behalf of all Troop N, it's our honor to have had you work on our case. Next, I'd like to invite Ronald Chiverella, Carmen Marie Racky, and family members to come up and provide some words.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone see me? They could not lower the podium. So thanks for your patience. For those of you that may not know, my name is Ronald Chiverella. I'm the oldest child from Carmen and Mary Chiverella. Introduce my sister, Carmen Marie. My younger brother, but the oldest in the middle is Barry Chiverella and David Chiverella. To the members of the extended family, I wanted to say thank you for coming today. Not only for today, but for the support you've provided to us over the years. That's been really so important, and I know extremely important to our family. On behalf of the Carmen and Mary Chiverella family standing here, and we really want to offer a heartfelt appreciation and an admiration for the Pennsylvania State Police. We keep hearing 58 years, and that, my goodness, that was a long time. But over those 58 years, the Pennsylvania State Police routinely made their presence known continuously through those 58 years. They visited and called with updates to the family. They responded to questions we had. They asked a lot of questions. They provided comfort and hope. And that was a human element. A bit of what Mark Barron had touched on. We gained a very tight emotional connection to each other. And that could be a little dangerous, I believe, in a professional capacity, but it's also a treasure and value for a family like ours that were affected by something like Marise's loss. The Pennsylvania State Police were unquestionably committed to solving Marise's case. I know that's repetition, but I'd like you to hear it again because it's something we feel in our hearts. An expression of this comes from a March 20th, 2019 press conference when Trooper Petrosky said, and I paraphrase, he said, over the last 55 years, this investigation has not stopped, and it is not going to stop. So it spoke so well to the spirit and the dedication we had seen for the 55 years that preceded that day. And it capsulizes the motivation and the core values also of the Pennsylvania State Police. So, although Trooper Petrosky spoke for himself, he was speaking on behalf of the family, and it also continued to give us the faith that we've had over the previous 55 years. So thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Many worked on Marise's case over the years. We've touched on that. The family remembers individuals like Danny Gentile, who was there. I won't start trying to figure out how long back it was, Danny, but you were there. You were very, very effective with my family, my mother and my father and so forth. And you were a valued asset, no doubt about it. I remember Brian Tobin. Sir, you were there, and you were very effective with helping us. I recall Sean Williams, and retired Corporal Tom McAndrew for their help in previous years to where we are today. So with that, our family wants to recognize the frontline team. You've heard of portions of it, I believe, maybe all of it that I will miss, but the frontline team which solved Marise's case, and I'm going to call out their names, and I would really appreciate it if you would stand when I call your name. Providing the leadership to the team has an outstanding job was Lieutenant Devin Kotowski. So if you would stand, sir. Our family's primary point of contact, and as a professional Pennsylvania State Trooper, and as what became a personal friend, Corporal Baron. Trooper James Kuros. Sir, you were Sergeant Ryan Stefanik. Retired Pennsylvania State Trooper and current Chief of Police at Chickalimmy, Pennsylvania, Sean Williams. And a wonderful individual, young, but he really proved himself, was our genealogist, volunteer consultant, Eric Schubert. Our family, thank you so much. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Carmen.
We have so many precious memories of Marise. At the same time, our family will always feel the emptiness and the love for absence. Consequently, we will continue to ask ourselves, what would have been, what could have been. So how does our family further embrace a sense of closeness and harm from the Our parents' sentiments were expressed a long time ago. They never sought punishment or revenge. Thanks to the Pennsylvania State Police, our family now knows the identity of Marise's murderer. Thanks to the Pennsylvania State Police, justice has been served today. As Marise's siblings, we will keep in mind two biblical teachings. The first comes from Romans chapter 12, verse 19, which reads, "Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord." And the second reading from Matthew chapter 18, verse 6, related to the sin of harming a child. "But anyone who is an obstacle to bring down one of these little ones, do not faith, will be better thrown into the sea with a great millstone around his neck." So that's what our family will continue to do. Thank you all very much.
I'm going to now introduce the Luzerne County District Attorney, Samuel Sangla Dolce, to provide remarks on behalf of the District Attorney's Office.
Thank you, everybody. I probably can't say too much that hasn't already been said. Number one, the appreciation for the state police cannot be overstated. Their continuous work on a matter at times when we are often short of resources, and it seems like a new emergency comes up every day. But their dedication to this case is really what solved it. My own Deputy District Attorney, Dan Zola, who worked tirelessly with the state police on this case. It's our great regret that we do not get to prosecute the individual responsible. However, I believe the family said it best, that he will face his own vengeance where he is right now. Again, thank you to the family for having patience and faith that eventually we would come to the conclusion and find the identity of the murderer. And thanks to the Pennsylvania State Police and the rest of my team that actually worked tirelessly to find the results in this case. Thank you.
At this point, we would like to take questions. We will do our very best to answer these questions. If for some reason a question arises that we can't answer at this time, we will get back to you. But again, we want accurate information released. As you've heard, this is a case that has been going on for a very long time, just short of 58 years. So keeping the details of this case accurate is what our goal is for today. So I'm going to invite Corporal Barron up here, Lieutenant Bertowski, and Mr. Schubert to come up and answer any questions that you may have.
Do you know how he died? He died fairly young.
Yes, we Pennsylvania State Police actually investigated the death of Mr. Ford. We believe he died from natural causes, possibly a heart attack. He was a bartender at Genealogist, right up the street here. At the time, I believe I'm correct, he died there. He died at Genealogist. We did the investigation, so yes.
And how close of proximity did the accused live to where he's?
At the time of the incident, they lived on, Mr. Ford lived on West 14th Street.
Probably six, 7 blocks.
I don't have a question, well, kind of. I have no idea where you came from, young man, but you need to keep going.
Was he married? Like when this
He
happened?
was not, we don't believe he was ever married.
Did he have hazel eyes? Like,
No, he lies.
blue eyes? Okay.
So in the beginning, obviously the information we had from the DNA, we exhausted all those efforts into the hazel/brown eyes, and then we had to come back to the other side. So it did not pan out on that note.
Right.
What can you tell us about Mr. Ford that we don't know, but just right now? Like, what was he doing all of these years before he died?
The best that I can tell you is there's not a lot of information on him. As the lieutenant alluded to earlier, he was arrested by our department in 1974. We can't find that report. All that I could tell you from 1974 standards, he was I think it was like a car supply salesman, whatever that means. That was off of the fingerprint card, so we obtained that.
Hi, good morning, Andy Mulholland, Chicago Witness News. Did Mr. Fort's name come up at all? You know, living in this community, a lot of names are bantered around, possible suspects, as you know. Did his name come up at all in the early days? Maybe Mr. Good would know. Did his name come up? Was he ever on the radar at all?
I didn't hear the question.
No, the Ford didn't come up early in the investigation.
No, that was foreign to me. When Sergeant Stefani called, I was just sitting down, the news had just started at 12 noon. My wife and I were having a lunch. And when he called me and told me that the case was solved and if I could come up and so forth. And not that any of us forgot it, but there was probably, I'd say at any one time, there were 23 of us that were devoted and assigned various facets of the case. And I don't know how I got to work on time because we were working, I would say, on an average from the day of the crime to into July, 7 days a week, and I would feel safe in saying 18 to 20 hours a day. And at that time in the state police, there was no overtime pay. And we worked not just the 6 days. The lieutenant that was running the case was Edward J. Swat Eye. And we would be out working, and before we went home, almost every day, we gathered in his office, went over what was accomplished, and I think the wives of my colleagues, including my own, I think they were about ready to pull their hair off because we didn't have one day off. The lieutenant gave a couple of guys from Mount Pocono, Bloomsburg, because they had to travel, and once in a while he gave, maybe they got 2-3 days off in that time frame, but it was every day. I mean, you'd maybe go home for supper, and would be in the morning. Many nights, I didn't get home till 3 o'clock and past that time, and we had to be back at 5, 6. I mean, it was just routine, and
That name didn't ring true for you.
and that name, no, that didn't ring a bell.
We had an initial list from the work they did, and I believe it was around 10 names maybe.
It might have been more than that.
It could have been more, but this was not a name on that list.
We only got Mr. Fort's name in 2020, and that was through the works of Mr. Schubert that his name came to light, so. Thank you.
Amanda Eustace with WNEP. Was this completely random? I mean, did the victim or the family know of Mr. Fort, ever heard of the name in the community back then?
My understanding is that the family did not know who Mr. Fort was. As far as was it random, I would have to assume it was, but, you know, the unfortunate thing with this case, with him never being interviewed, you know, we're gonna know who did it, but all of those other questions, we just don't have answers for.
Do you guys know if he committed any other crimes, heinous crimes against other kids or other people over the years?
Yeah, the only two things that we know of are the two that I mentioned earlier. The 1974 sexual assault. We won't go with the lady's name. We have interviewed her. So that was actually a very violent encounter. And I believe she felt that she could have been killed at that time. It's just somebody happened upon the incident and stopped it. We know of that, and we also know of another incident that the city police arrested him for in Sesame, which it was a minor offense type thing. But that's the only two, and that's why I will put this out there. If there are people that know, we would sure love to hear from you. So anybody that's out there listening to this, we definitely like to hear from you and get a better understanding of who this person was.
Did he do any time for those two crimes?
The 1978 case, I can't speak to. That wasn't ever on his criminal record. The 1974 case that the lieutenant's been talking about, he actually pled guilty to aggravated assault and out of your probation.
You mentioned Mr. Fort's family was, I guess, helpful in some way in terms of DNA, or can you go into what exactly they did to help you guys?
So Corporal Barron and Trooper Kuros were basically leading this investigation. With information received from Mr. Schubert here, we would go out to certain relatives and we asked for buccal swabs, basically a swab for the inside of your cheek that gives you the cells that we can use to identify DNA profile. And we would use that profile and match it up against the killer. But also, like he was talking about centimorgans and all that, so we also did utilize genealogical databases that are for the public use. So that would give us a match as far as centimorgans between which she had talked about. So with all that, we would get a little bit closer at times. We did at one point get his brother's DNA, because as I talked, we got down to 2 people. We knew the matriarchal line in the family. Again, thanks Mr. Schubert, we knew the patriarchal line. So we knew it had to come from this one family. And we, however, both of them were dead. It would be his sister-in-law gave us some material to work with, and we were able to produce a DNA profile for the brother. Once we had that, we knew we were very close. And then we knew we had to meet with the DA's office and do an exhumation.
Gotcha.
And we were pretty confident at that point. We had already spoke with the Chiverellas. We told them where we were. This was going to be our guy, but we were going to prove it. And I think we did that.
And just to follow up for Eric, you mentioned you're not even 21 yet, correct? But I had heard that you'd been doing this for 10 years, you said? So did you start this when you were?
I've been involved in genealogy for about 10 years. I've been involved in cold cases for about 2, and genetic genealogy for about 5. So this is certainly a case that I've been working on for a long time, as I've mentioned, as has everyone else here. And it couldn't have gotten done without everyone's input, opinions, and that sort of thing coming into play.
How does someone get into genealogy at 10 years old?
Just on that, if we could say that for 1 second. I vetted him before we used him. He did help solve other cold cases. There was one, definitely, I talked to a police department in Chicago, outside of Chicago. Couldn't talk any better about the man. And another Upper Marion Police in outside of Philadelphia who helped him. So I did vet him, so we knew what we were getting.
Yeah.
And we're very thankful for what we got.
I was just going to say, Eric, how does someone get into this line of work at 10, 11 years old?
I was homesick a lot when I was a kid, so I would see genealogy commercials, and I would say, wait a second, maybe I could do that. And I thought it would be a 2-week thing, and here I am. But I'm certainly thankful I started.
Thank you.
We did on January 6th this year. And again, I pointed out that Cavalry Cemetery helped us quite a bit, and I do thank them for keeping it quiet. Obviously, they knew where we were digging, they knew who was in the grave, and they were very cooperative with us in keeping it to themselves, and we do appreciate that.
Like, did they think, oh, my cousin or whatever, did they think they were like, a little crazy? Did they say that makes sense, or you seem like a nice guy, or did they say anything about? So like, like, did they think, oh, well, he's always been an odd guy, or strange, or were they like completely surprised by it?
No, they did not elaborate that he was a potentially violent person.
Yeah.
The one word I feel like that keeps coming up is the persistence of you guys and what you have done. Was there ever a time where, you guys kept hitting roadblock after roadblock after roadblock? Like, what did you guys do to kind of continue to push and get past this to be able to solve this and give the family closure?
If I could speak, at least for the 3 of us, because we've had many conversations, we banged our head on the wall a few times and had to just regroup. And we would go back and do more research for newspaper articles, all the other things that he would use, military records, anything we can get. Corporal Barron and Trooper Kuros would bang on more doors and talk to more people. We got fortunate, we got lucky a few times, and sometimes being lucky is better than good. And in this case, we'll take the luck. But yes, we had some times where it wasn't fun, but we got there.
Chris Kelly, Brandon Times, and back to writing the movie script. I just was wondering, like, Eric, how does it happen that you reach out to these guys? I mean, what was that like when you said, hey, I'm a local kid and I'm good at genealogy and I might be able to help you solve this 50-plus-year-old murder case? How does that work? What was your pitch?
I mean, I saw the news reports, and at the time, I had previous cold case experience. I was looking for my next case where I could potentially be of help. And Marise's case was, I believe, I remember vividly, it was the first one I came across when I started looking for the next area in which I could help. So I certainly didn't know if my strategy of just reaching out and saying, hey, I think I know what I'm doing. If I'm not stepping on any toes, I'd be happy to help. I didn't think that would work, but it did, and I'm very thankful for that, because I knew that I could at least potentially get this case a little closer to being solved. And in the end, I'm happy we could pull it off.
Nary, what college did you attend?
Elizabethtown College in Lancaster County.
And are you a junior, senior?
Yes, junior.
What's your major?
History. Shocker.
And
Eric, have you ever considered doing a podcast or anything?
I mean, maybe I'll have to take you up on that idea now that you said it.
I would like to know if the name Joseph Callinger appeared on your list of suspects.
That name, there are only a handful of people that have read all, I think we're up to 4,694 pages of that case file. I do know that name. Never, I don't believe, was really ever considered to be a viable suspect in this case. But that name is familiar to me.
Sorry, on that.
I just recall Joseph Callinger was, I believe he actually confessed to the crime. He was a serial killer. He was checked out. And the details that he provided to the crime did not match anything regarding it, so he was eliminated as a suspect.
And you did this pro bono?
Yes.
Okay, is this something you want to do as like, maybe open, make a business out of it?
I mean, potentially. I started working on the case because I thought I could make an impact. I thought I could help the family. I thought I could help the state police. That was my motivation. So at the end of the day, who knows where things will go next. But if there's an opportunity in the future to continue helping a family like this, I'm all for it. So we'll see where it takes me.
The picture that was released in 2019, I'm looking at this, there doesn't seem to be much of a resemblance on it. Was there any more recent pictures that may have had more of a resemblance of
No,
Jim
that
Halford?
of course is technology that Parabon created using your DNA. They will tell you it's not 100% accurate, we knew that, but we tried. We tried to use what we could at the time. Again, as technology expands upon itself and gives us more things to use, we were using everything we could. But what I would say is that generated a lot of interest, and it actually sparked a lot of what we have going on today. So, and I don't know if that's where did you see the case from that? Or,
Yes.
I couldn't remember where he actually saw it, but see, so that gave us him. So that put us where we are today. So that actually was a very good thing to use.
In memory of the victim, is there any positive information that you can share with us? Like what she liked, what school she went to, anything like that?
For the family.
She was a wonderful sister. She was obviously 9 years old at the time. We watched her grow because we watched each other grow. As a sibling, we relied heavily on the compassion and the direction of our parents. We come from good roots. Hopefully we continue to carry on the examples and the morals that our parents have portrayed to us. Our mother reached a point over a number of years where she, I forget, not sure the conditions, but she told us all that she forgave the man that murdered her daughter. Okay?
Our biggest concern is what happened to the
Yeah, we've talked in recent days, obviously, and one of the items that we do recall was the days after the incident. We always said grace before meals on certain Sundays, not every day, but on Sundays and stuff with meals. And my mother would always lead us in grace, but she would always end it with a prayer asking Jesus, the Blessed Mother, please help the Pennsylvania State Police find a man that hurt my daughter. She was well liked at school. She was very shy girl, very shy. We used to tease her a lot because of that. Okay. We have regrets for that, obviously, after we lost her. All right. She loved to play. We were not a very wealthy family, and my father worked very hard at his business that he had, a grocery store. My mother worked in a knitting mill.
help make ends meet. And one of the things Maurice wanted, and she, with him, as many children do, when Christmas was coming, and she wanted to be able to play the organ, to have an organ. Because she had also expressed aspirations to be a nun someday. Okay. So my parents did that. They bought her an organ. I recall it, they got it over at Sears, that was up on Broad Street years ago. And that organ is still in good shape today. And we all recall times when we would play the organ with her, not having any notes to follow, just making some noise. But we learned how to repetitively make those same noises, so we were in concert when those things happened. So, very happy girl. And the day of, that we lost her, it's been written many times. Tom and Marie and Barry would always walk to school with Maurice, because that's what they did. That was the habit. That particular day, that Maurice's nun, the sister, St. Joseph's School, it was her feast day. If your name was Sister Mary and St. Mary's Day is on the calendar, then traditionally you bring a gift in to the nun. Okay. That particular day, Maurice left a few minutes early so she could take some canned goods that my father gave to her, some fruit, I think, and some other. And we were bound to go to Catholic Mass every morning during school week at 8 o'clock. So she left early to hurry up, and her little legs, which she did, she went quickly to school, and she was attempting to get them into the classroom so then she could leave there, get to church, sit with her fellow students before she got in trouble for being late. Okay, so that's what she did that day, and she often talked about being a nun. She had this admiration for her sister and so forth, but other.
Just a quiet, sweet.
Yeah, very well liked for her fellow students. Thought things remember that.
Anyone have anything else? Yeah, we'll try and answer anything you have. This isn't like some of our other cases where there's prosecution pending, where we have to kind of keep some things to ourselves, but we'll answer anything we can. Right, sir.
Rob Mann, 69 days. I was just wondering if there were any other photos than this one. And someone mentioned it earlier that this may be a yearbook photo. Is that what that is?
Yeah, that's where we obtained that photo from. That's from it's a 1959. If it's considered Hazleton. I don't know. No, it's not. It's Hazleton, but I mean, I don't know back in the day how they referred to that school. I guess it would be Hazleton High School.
But of any of the other pictures that we did find, they were later in life, so this would probably be the closest to when it happened. Because he was 22 at the time, so a couple of years out.
The 1974 sexual assault, where was that?
That happened in Hazel Township, which we're in now, happened out near Stockton, so the east of Hazleton City, in a stripping area where they were mining coal. It's out on, I believe, on 3rd Road out there.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, sorry, sir.
How did you discover the body?
How did we discover the body?
There was I believe it was 16 at the time, went out to the stripping pit to learn how to drive, I believe, was the way that it was written. And his uncle took him. And being as though this location was a stripping pit used for refuse, there were a lot of scrappers back in the day, and pickers, and they would commonly go and look to see if there was anything valuable. The day that they discovered Maurice in the strip, they looked down. Now, obviously, it's not there anymore. That whole area is being reclaimed, but you could, from all the photos that I've ever seen, you could look down into this pit. And they thought that it was a large doll that was just laid there, or seemed to have been placed there. And upon closer inspection, they found that it was actually Marise Chiverella. And then they notified the Hazleton State Police, Trooper Raymond Dobrzelski, who is still with us. He's up in, I believe, Susquehanna County residing. He was the first trooper on scene. Confirmed that, Marise was deceased. Called back to the barracks, and Detective Sergeant Michael Dean responded out to the scene and started the investigation. And that's how she was discovered.
But if anybody needs to talk to anybody individually afterwards, you can certainly do that. But we do appreciate everybody coming out today. Thank you.
Like I stated in the beginning, we have media packets that we will hand out. If we run out of them and somebody needs one, you just let me know and I can email them. I think I can speak for everyone when we say we're very proud to be here. And we hope that this brings not only closure to the family. I think Corporal Barron said it great when he said that this is also going to bring closure to the Hazleton community. So thank you for attending. Thank you for getting this message out there. We appreciate it on behalf of all the members of Troop N. Thank you.